page soon after the webinar is over. We prefer that you reserve your questions for the end of the webinar presentation, and when asking your questions, please use the raise hand function. Maria will unmute you and call on you so you can ask your questions, and you also feel free to ask questions in the chat box. Please reserve various project-specific questions for email. You can email us at opc_prop1grants@resources.ca.gov, which is shown on the slide. And you'll also need to, well, actually we've changed your full proposal submission process, so you don't have to email it in. Maria will go over that later. But this email is the best way to get a hold of us.
Thanks for that clarification, Holly. But we will go through that at the end of the webinar.
Yeah. So why don't we get started? So this is what we're going to be covering today. We're going to quickly go over where we are on the solicitation schedule and then jump into the full proposal process. We're going to go over the full proposal template in depth and discuss supplemental documents that you may need to include with your full proposal package. And finally, we'll be discussing the evaluation and scoring criteria and how to submit your full proposal package. And at the end, we will have time for Q&A. So just as a reminder, we have reached out to you around May 19th to invite selected applicants back to submit a full proposal. This is still a competitive process, so we have around 3 times the amount of funding available being invited back, just so folks know. This is still competitive. And we'll be contacting, so full proposals are due on June 30th, and we will be contacting applicants selected for an interview or virtual site visit in mid-August. And at that time, it will still be a competitive process. And then we will be announcing proposals that will be recommended to the Council for Funding in October. And our goal is to have any staff recommendations for projects completed by mid-November before the Thanksgiving holiday. We anticipate working closely with selected applicants up until the December council meeting to ensure that we have everything we need. As mentioned before, the soonest a grant could be awarded from this round will be December 2021. And if approved during the council meeting, it will take around 2 to 3 months to execute the grant agreements. So we're going to start going through the full proposal. On the slide is really an outline of the different sections of the full proposal, but I'm actually going to just bring up the specific document so we can run through it. Let me get that up. It might take a second. All right, just a moment. Can you guys see the full proposal document on my screen?
I can, Holly.
Okay.
Can anyone?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this is the cover page, and it's largely the same as the cover page on the letter of intent. But I just want to flag that you guys should make sure that this cover page reflects current information. For example, during the letter of intent, we mentioned that your project budget may change by up to 10%. So make sure you know the amount requested here reflects the budget for your full proposal. And a couple of the folks here have been invited back, but you were asked to remove ineligible project elements, and obviously your budgets are going to change more than 10%, and that's okay. Our next section is the application checklist, and this is just more for you to make sure that you have all the application elements and forms that you need to submit. And this checklist also helps us with completeness review. Similar to last time, if your application isn't complete, you'll have a week to make corrections. We're going to go through all these application sections first before coming back to these different supplemental documents. So section 3 is really where we get into the meat of the full proposal. This is the project narrative, and the entire section 3 project narrative is limited to 8 pages. Unlike last time, we don't have page limits on subsections within the project narrative, so you can just divide up your space however you think is best. We've reorganized the prompts under this section to align directly with the scoring criteria in the solicitation. And we've included writing prompts in red under the subheaders here. Please use these to inform your responses, but delete the red text before submitting your proposal. This will help you with meeting the page limit and will make for easier review for us. So under alignment with Prop 1 and OPC priority project type, one issue that came up consistently in LOI review under project need was that we really need to see evidence in the full proposal so that the proposed project will address specific water quality pollutants at the project site. For projects that are proposing to treat stormwater, we also need to see that the treatment technology will adequately address the pollutants at that site, and we also want to know what acreage of land drains to that project site for treatment. And we also, I know it's a lot of information, but we also want to get a sense of whether that land generally has industrial use on it versus residential use, that kind of thing. So under benefits to communities, your narrative here can be a shorter summary of the benefits to communities. For some projects, it might be beneficial to describe here or in the community engagement plan how the proposed project fits into larger efforts to benefit the community on economic or social issues. I know sometimes that we had some questions about how this project fits into larger management strategies at the site. And so we're going to talk more about the community engagement plan in a moment, but so because you have both of those sections to talk about community engagement, this can be a shorter summary if that's what you'd like to do. Maria, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Nope, I think that, yeah, if you wanted to just kind of summarize and make a reference to section 6, which is the community engagement plan, and as Holly mentioned, we'll go over that. You can definitely do that here if in the community engagement plan, you'll be elaborating and letting us know how you intend to engage and, provide benefits.
So under the project proposal scope, readiness, and applicant capacity, this section is meant to be a high-level overview of project location, tasks, permitting, and team capacity. You will be able to provide more details in the scope of work in section 5 and through the attachments. And some of those attachments include the CEQA environmental compliance form, the permit approval status form, project team resumes, land tenure form, and so on. Under the measuring effectiveness and operations and maintenance, so this now has its own section, oh dear. This now has its own section for scoring. And so please include how the project effectiveness would be determined both in the short and long term. And please also explicitly state who would take responsibility for long-term operations and maintenance. In the letters of intent, it was often implied that who would be taking over long-term operations and maintenance, but it's really important that you specifically identify who that party would be. For partnerships and collaboration, identify collaboration with government agencies, nonprofits, the Conservation Corps, local businesses, and others beyond collaboration with community-based organizations and the community itself. Please include both existing collaborations or partners actively involved in your project, as well as groups or agencies that you intend on partnering with or are working towards partnering with, especially if they should be involved in your project. And then in leveraging of funding sources, this is pretty straightforward. Please identify any in-kind or leverage funding being provided. And please note that state funds are not considered leverage under Prop 1. One thing we did with this full proposal template that is different is that we found that having the tables included in the page limit in the LOI was really confusing for some people, and there were a lot of formatting issues that came up. So we've moved all of the tables into their own section, and so this section doesn't have a page limit, so hopefully formatting won't be as much of an issue. So for this budget section, please provide your updated budget for the full proposal. This is the same set of templates we provided for the LOI. We just put them on landscape format. For task description and schedule, this is where you'll really provide your detailed scope of work. One thing a lot of folks did on the deliverables table in the LOI was they described their tasks rather than the actual deliverable OPT would receive. So the scope of work template actually has columns for both the task activities and the deliverable. So for example, if your task was construction, activities could include going out to bid for construction, monitoring construction implementation, and then the deliverable could be a set of before and after photos, a notice of completion, or as-built documents. We've also changed the project schedule template. So you'll be tracking task activities by quarter rather than by month, and this also makes the full potential grant period fit onto one big row on the page, so you aren't having to do Gantt charts over multiple years on separate rows. So hopefully this will be easier to work with, and feel free to add tasks and make it fit your project. One thing to note about this, we did get a couple of LOIs where the project schedule went out past Q4 2024. And even though we want to know that long-term monitoring or long-term operations and maintenance is happening, we don't want that included on this project schedule because we won't be able to fund anything past the Q4 of 2024. And section 6 is the community engagement plan, and this is really where you'll start going into depth on your engagement with communities. And I will turn it over to Maria for this.
Thanks, Holly. So section 6 is where you describe your community engagement plan. The entire section is limited to 2 pages. So similar to the above project narrative section in that we don't have page limits on subsections here either. There are only 3 sort of subsections here, or subheaders, whichever you prefer. But there is no page limit for each one. Altogether, this is supposed to be just 2 pages. Also similar to the project narrative section and everywhere else on this template, please use the prompts in red to inform your responses, but also delete the red text before submitting your proposal. So as I mentioned, there's 3 subsections here to respond to. There's defining the community and community informed needs, proposed community engagement and outreach, which are supposed to be like the short-term actions, and then ensuring sense of ownership in the community, the long-term actions and benefits. So as Holly mentioned earlier, you can have a short summary of the benefits of communities in section 3 in the project narrative. Under project demonstrates significant benefits to communities entitled to environmental justice, and then refer reviewers to this section to elaborate on how the proposed project fits into larger efforts to benefit the community on economic and social issues. So under the defining the community and community informed needs, here we ask you to briefly define the community's geographic context in terms of scale, size, and a bit on the community's background, such as their demographics. Then further elaborate on the community's need for the project and desired goals and outcomes. The questions and the prompts are there to provide guidance to help frame your response. Then in the proposed community engagement and outreach, in this section, please describe your engagement strategies, describe what type of opportunities or activities will take place in the duration of the project, specific to the grant's funding period. Use this section to demonstrate how the project team plans to engage, organize, conduct outreach, and communicate project-related information to community stakeholders. And describe how these actions will be tracked to ensure progress is being made. Please note the budget as well, or funding directly allocated for these efforts. Be sure to emphasize social and economic benefits here, such as employment opportunities, building community capacity, things like that. We'll be evaluating your approach to these actions and how they will be measured to get a better sense of the project team's ability to meaningfully engage and how successful it could be, and what benefits are also provided in doing so. And then the last section, ensuring sense of ownership in the community, the long-term actions and benefits. This is where you'll describe long-term actions that help sustain the benefits for the community. What kind of opportunities does a project provide to help sustain community engagement and provide durable benefits that support long-lasting community inclusion or commitments to the project? Again, identify economic or social pathways, long-term monitoring plans that involve the community, or anything that kind of develops that sense of ownership in relation to the community and the project. So yeah, that's about it. And you're more than welcome to ask questions during, but you can also save them for later. I'll hand it over. So Holly will go through the supplemental documents pretty quickly, and then we'll talk about scoring and then how to submit.
Yeah, so let me bring up the supplemental documents, and again, let me know if you guys can see them. So all of our supplemental documents, well, not all of them, but a large number of them are on our Prop 1 webpage. So the CEQA and environmental compliance form is what we are going to use to understand the CEQA status of the project. I'm going to bring it up quickly. Thanks for your patience, everyone. So effectively, this is where you can indicate that the project is exempt from CEQA and provide a brief explanation of how it's exempt, if that's the case. So, which categorical exemption does it fall under, that sort of thing, and provide a link to the notice of exemption. If the project requires or required environmental review under CEQA, please provide the lead agency name, the representative, and their contact information, and information on what sort of CEQA document's been prepared and a link to it if it's available. And if CEQA is in progress, please provide an estimated date by which the lead agency will approve the CEQA document. For projects that are implementation only, CEQA needs to be complete before the OPC can approve the project. If the project is involving both planning and implementation, and CEQA review is a part of that planning process, it's okay to not have CEQA done before OPC approves the project. All right, and now we're waiting on the permit approval status form. So this is essentially covers all the permits that are not CEQA. And the idea is just to essentially let us know if these permits are required, have they been applied for, are they, have they been acquired by the project if that's necessary, and if you don't have them yet, when you'll anticipate having them. Land tenure is really important for us to understand how feasible implementation project is. This essentially shows who's the landowner and do you have site control over this project where the work will occur. So that's really what this is intended to do, and it helps us understand project feasibility. Again, this is required for implementation projects. One of our additional supplemental documents is project team resumes or CVs, and it's required for all projects. And this helps us really understand if the team is qualified to do the work. Obviously, we don't have a form for that on our website, but you can just attach those to the full application. We also have a nonprofit organization questionnaire. And this is really meant to demonstrate that nonprofit organizations have the adequate fiscal controls to receive and manage state grant funds. And so this is only required for nonprofits. We also will need, as we mentioned earlier, the California Conservation Corps review document, and that's required for all projects. I think many of you probably already have this because initial consultation likely happened during the LOI phase. But if you don't, I'd recommend reaching out to the California Conservation Corps. We do have, I believe, we have a link to their webpage for their consultation process and information. So if you haven't done that already, please do that. Consultation with the Corps is required for Prop 1. We also require letters of support for the full proposal. So we recommend reaching out to both local and non-local stakeholders that would be supportive of the project and get some letters of support for the work. It really helps to show us that the project is valuable to the community. We also have, I know this is a long list, we also have a governing body resolution or a governing board resolution. And this essentially lets us know that your organization has agreed to receive funds from the OPC. And it is important that you use the specific template that we provide on our website. We have gotten a few questions about this with concerns about the timeline, and we really need this before OPC can approve any funding for the project. So I recognize that a lot of governing boards only meet quarterly or might not be meeting within the next 6 weeks. So if you need to submit this later, it's fine to submit a draft with your full proposal and indicate to us when you would expect a completed or adopted board resolution to be provided. But this is something we absolutely have to have by December of this year. And we are almost completely through. So the last form I'm really going to talk about is the State Form 204, and this is required for all projects. And this, I believe we have Holly Shand on the line who can push back if I'm describing this poorly, but this is the official state form that gets organizations into our state accounting system. So we need a completed form to provide payments to grantees. And so we're asking for this now to avoid having holdups later in the process once projects are selected and recommended. The State Form 205 is optional, and this is only needed if your organization's mailing address is different from the address provided on the State Form 204.
I'd just like to chime in that make sure your standard 204 has the address where you would like to receive your invoice payments. So if your home office is different than where you want your invoice payments to go to, that is where you'll need to fill out the standard 205.
Awesome,
Everything else is perfect
now. So aside from that, in terms of supplemental attachments to the full proposal, we welcome additional maps or site photos or design plans as necessary for the projects. Anything that you didn't submit with the LOI that you think would be useful for us in terms of understanding the project. And with that, I think I will move back to the scoring criteria. So the scoring criteria that we're using to score the full proposals is the same criteria that we used during the letter of intent stage. However, we're going to be looking for more details and specifics in this round. Additionally, the community engagement plan will also be scored using the project demonstrates significant benefits to communities entitled to environmental justice, and the partnerships and collaboration section, and how well you respond to the prompts outlined in the template. So Maria, did you want to take the next section?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Holly. So finally, to end before we get into questions, we want to talk about how you should submit your full proposal. So in anticipation of receiving larger files this time around, we decided to change how we'd like applicants to submit. So instead of email, we will be asking applicants to submit their full proposal in supplemental documents by uploading it to a shared Google Drive. Each applicant will receive a link to a designated shared Google Drive folder. It will be specific to your proposal and can only be accessed by the applicant and OPC staff. Links will be emailed to you either by the end of this week or early next week. Please be sure to fully complete the full proposal and attach required forms. You can access application materials on our Prop 1 webpage, as you can see there. So please submit your full proposal package by June 30th by uploading it to the shared folder. We also ask that ahead of time, at least before the submission deadline, if you're having any issues accessing the folder or uploading files or any other concerns with this format, please let us know, again, sooner than later. So once you guys receive that link, you know, if you guys want to test it, maybe, you know, put a file in it just to check that, you know, things are working well, and that you have all the permissions that you need. And if you don't, if you have any issues, please reach out to me, to us at that email, our OPC_Prop1 grants email. And before we get into Q&A, I did want to let everyone know we have gotten a few selected applicants who reached out to us about discussing their specific feedback, their specific proposal feedback. And we wanted to allow for some time for us to discuss that feedback. So we will have some time after this webinar. I believe we have probably 2 applicants scheduled. We're hoping to do like 15-minute slots. So for, you know, starting at 3. So I think we have 3:15 possibly, and 3:45. 3:30 might reschedule, I'm not sure. Lori, you're probably on the webinar, you can let me know.
I think we can make it at 3:30. That would
Okay.
be great. Adam, are you around and able to make it?
Yes, I can make it. Thank you.
Okay. 3:30 is great for us.
Okay, great. If anyone else, so we'll have like 2 more slots available today, and then we have more time that we'll be offering if there's still people that want to speak to us about their specific feedback. We're going to offer Monday, June 7th, between 2 and 5 p.m. So for those that, if you can just enter in the chat if you're interested. Like I said, we have 2 available slots today, and we'll have more time on Monday. Please let me know if you're interested in the chat, and then also provide, you know, if you'd want to speak to us, you know, this afternoon at 3, sometime after between 3 and 4, or on Monday.
Okay. It looks like we have a number of responses in the chat.
Let's see. So I'm just going to get some of these down.
Okay. So while Maria's doing that, does anyone have general questions on the full proposal content or process or any of the attachments? We're happy to answer questions on all of that.
I have some questions.
Sure.
This is Sue with the Coastal Conservancy. I have several, but they're scattered around, so I might have to chime back in if that's okay.
Okay.
One initial question I have is, you mentioned the ability to shift the budget by 10% and up to 10%. And we're not intending to drop anything out of our scope that we were thinking of, but a few things have changed about the overall project, and we may not need as much match, and so the match might drop. more than 10%. And I wonder
Okay.
if that is within an acceptable, or are you talking about the ask from OPC that can't change by 10%?
We're talking about the ask from OPC.
Okay, great.
So that can change by up to 10% in either direction.
Okay.
There's a couple of exceptions, and those folks know who they are because we've spoken to them, where we've asked for specific scope changes, and their budget will probably change by more than 10%, and that's fine.
Okay, thank you. And I was going to ask you about just generally water quality concerns. You mentioned known pollutants in the water quality conditions. Are you speaking about more industrial type pollutants, or are you just talking about anything that qualifies? You know, if this is a 303 D water body, that qualifies as the pollutants of concern, correct?
Yes, so the 303D water body, I mean, you'd have to call out the specific thing that it is, what that it's listed for. So maybe that's sedimentation. I mean, that's not like an industrial pollutant, but if it's listed for that and the project addresses that, then that's the sort of thing we want to see.
Okay. I think that's it for now. If I may put them in the chat if I find my other questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Holly. Oh,
Hi, Jenna.
hi. I've got a couple questions. I put one in the chat, but I'll just ask it. For the budget, how much more detailed do you want us to be, given it's the same template that was in the LOI?
So that's a good question. I don't know that we're expecting a ton more detail. If you do, for example, have a really huge construction budget and you want to break that down into subtasks, that might be helpful. But yeah, we aren't necessarily asking for this budget template to get more detailed. The budget that comes with our work plans is a bit more detailed than what we're asking for here. And let me see if I can bring up the budget template again. Yeah, so in our work plans, we ask applicants to break down their budget by like personnel, materials, subcontractors for each task. And so we aren't asking you to do that sort of a breakdown here, but it's good to keep that in the back of your mind that that's something we'll be asking for.
Okay. Would it be possible for us to see a version of what you ask for later as kind of a template to use? Okay.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Okay. And then my other question with regard to the pollutant removal, and I know we're asking for, we can get some more specifics for ours at our time slot, but for the benefit of the group, I'm wondering if you can look at, if we're talking green infrastructure, for the amount of flow that these intake, can we do like a loading calculation based on the concentrations of those pollutants that we know to be in the nearby sampling results? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I mentioned acreage because we thought it might be easier for folks, but if you have information on what the actual flow is, then that's great.
Okay. Thank you.
Looks like we have a few people with raised hands. I may stop sharing my screen because it will help me see who wants to talk. Just a moment.
This is Jennifer Stern with the City of Oakland. I'm not sure how to raise my hand, but
okay.
If somebody else was before me, they can go ahead.
So
If you want, I can call on people, Holly.
That would be awesome.
So first person with their hand up is Barbara Salzman. Barbara, I'm gonna go ahead and ask you to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks. I had a question. Now you're talking about the budget that we've already submitted. That you expect. Well, my question is about changing it to expand it to include stipends for the community members, because we hadn't we hadn't expanded our project that far at the time of the letters were due. So we're hoping to do that, to get a more involved community plan that would involve, and I could not also tell from what I've read so far whether you do allow stipends to community members as part of the application. So there's two questions. I don't know if I'm clear enough.
Yeah. So as I said earlier, when the LOIs were due, we knew that those were preliminary, and at the time, folks had asked whether there was any flexibility in having the budgets change later as the projects were more developed. And so we're allowing budget changes of up to 10% compared to what was submitted in the LOI. So that being said, so stipends for internships or for community members doing work on the project are absolutely something we're looking for as part of the solicitation.
Oh, okay, great.
And Maria, feel free to chime in. I think she's really busy scheduling right now, but yeah, if there's anything you want to add about, you know, changing a project to include stipends for community members at this point.
Oh, I think that's still okay if it fits within, you know, if the budget didn't change significantly, and I'm sure, you know, Holly probably mentioned that. I actually wanted to mention that I think there was another proposal that still had, I don't know if it was the applicant who asked, but there was a proposal that did still have like volunteering, and I think we did make some comments about, you know, potentially not having it as volunteering or providing some compensation and those opportunities. So yeah, we're more than happy to see those changes made or incorporated as long as they fit within.
Do you have any examples of the kinds of work other than planting and taking care of, you know, vegetative habitats, that the kind of work that community members have done for stipends?
I think it all depends also on the phase of your project. So, I mean, if you're not in the restoration phase or many opportunities to engage the community in your planning and design phases, that can also be compensated for their time and, you know, input as they participate. I mean, it's very difficult for some communities to make time, you know, to attend some of these meetings, but I think that's part of what we're looking for is finding meaningful ways to get the community members engaged and providing incentives or you know, compensation for their participation in those planning stages as well. So, and even at a later stage for like implementation, construction, you know, I think on the ground work is great. I think opportunities for students can also, you know, educational purposes can also, you know, be, you know, I think it's really open to your interpretation of how you can get them actively involved in your project. And then I think that can also help develop those relationships that can also benefit the long-lasting impacts.
Yeah, we have a long-term relationship already, but we're not yet in construction, so it's
So,
you know, I've been really struggling with how to you know, get involved more, but they are involved.
So I feel like this might be good for an offline conversation.
Yeah, that's fine.
So we can get that scheduled.
Great.
Barbara, by the way, did you, I know you indicated that you wanted to speak to us on Monday. You originally had a slot available for 3 p.m. today. Did you
Oh, if
still
I can do 3 today, I wasn't sure about that. That would be fine.
Okay, so I'll
Why don't I
hold
say
you.
3?
So
Okay.
I just want to confirm with everyone, I did get everyone's names for their interest to meet with us on Monday. I'm just going to run your names very quickly just to confirm I got you. And then I have 3 folks that will be meeting with us today. So for today, I will have, we'll have Barbara, Lori Richmond's team, and Jennifer, Jennifer Stern from the City of Oakland. I'll also include you at a time slot today. So I'll send that invite shortly in a few minutes. And then for Monday, I have Jenna Voss, Sue Corbelli, Juliana Cuomo, Eric Humel, and I really apologize if I'm butchering your name. Bill Henry, David Pineda, and Chris Lim. Heidi wanted to reserve a slot for him, and Jackie McLeod's team. That's my list.
Yeah.
So if I didn't say your name, please say something in the chat.
Yeah. So Holly Shand, who do we have up next?
All right, up next we have Carol with the Port of San Francisco. I'm gonna go ahead and ask you to oh, you already unmuted yourself. There you go.
Okay, thank you. And I couldn't pay attention to the webinar and sign up in the chat at the same time. That's kind of beyond my capacity. So I'll chat or email separately about setting up a time to meet with you guys if needed. But I have 3 questions. The first is about the water quality pollutants, similar to the question that Sue asked. San Francisco Bay is listed as impaired for invasive species. So I'm assuming since the proposal solicitation referred to the 303D list designated impairments specifically, that would be considered a water quality pollutant to be addressed, invasive species?
I mean, I guess that could be the case. I'm trying to think of what projects in the Bay moved forward with, because the Bay is really overrun with invasive species.
Right.
So I feel like this maybe would be better for an offline conversation.
Okay. That's fine. The Conservation Corps consultation process, we've already gotten a Conservation Corps consultation for a different Prop 1 program. Can we use the same one, or should we ask for a new consultation?
When you say it's for a different Prop 1 program, do you mean it was for a different Prop 1 funding source, but the same project?
Same project,
okay.
Same Prop 1 funding, different agency. CDFW had a Prop 1 grant solicitation.
I think that would be okay. If it's for the same project, it's more that I don't know, like how their response would be different.
Can you maybe follow up with our project, our lead, our corps lead, Andrea? I think we provided her email a while ago to confirm that.
Yeah.
I think we might have it on the website, but regardless, I can send it to you if you need it.
How about I let you know if I can't find it? I probably have it somewhere. So I will try reaching back to the Conservation Corps just to have them confirm their previous determination. And then my third question is about partnerships. Do you have any particular way that you define partnerships? I've encountered grant programs where partners only means people who are financially contributing to the project, and other grant programs where the definition of partnership is not so tight. So do you guys have criteria about that?
Our definition is broader than just folks that would be contributing financially. So partners might be organizations that might be contributing, like monitoring resources, whether that's like in-kind personnel, or it could be, a specific like local organization that you do a lot of work with on the project, even if they aren't putting in any kind of financial contribution.
Okay, great, thank you.
So next we have Juliana Cuomo. I'm gonna go ahead and ask you to unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you. Juliana Cuomo, working with the City of National City. I had a follow-up question on the budget submittal. Just to clarify, we can submit the budget in a different format like a more involved format than what is listed in the template right now? Or would you prefer to see it in that way?
I would say we'd prefer to see it in this way because it makes it easier for us to compare it against, well, compare it to other projects. That being said, if you want to break tasks down into subtasks or really large ticket items, that's all right.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
Go, Holly, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, and again, after this, we'll get a link up on the webpage to the actual budget template we use in our grant agreements, which is more detailed, and that can, if you guys wanted to submit that along with your proposal, you can, but it's more to give you an idea of where this would be going if the project's selected for funding.
Great. And then I had a question on the resume submittal. Are you expecting to see like broader company resumes or like individual resumes with specific skill sets, or just more detailed? What level of experience are you expecting to see it?
I think it depends. Like we want to see the project team's qualifications.
Okay.
You know, showing perhaps experience in similar efforts or experience in executing this type of work. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers my question. I'm sorry, and just one more question. For some of the other supplemental documents, it asks for a map and photo page and some other things. If we've submitted those in the previous LOI submittal, and we didn't make any changes, would you like us to resubmit them again so it's in one package for review, or just not submit those?
I don't think you have to.
Yeah.
It's just optional. If you have other, like the photos or design plans or something that you weren't able to submit. Yeah.
We submitted them in the last round. And so I was just wondering if it was like too duplicative to resubmit so that it was all together now, especially since you have this new format of submittal.
Yeah. I mean, I think it could be helpful for our reviewers. So if you want to make sure the reviewers see them and it's not a huge pain for you guys, then feel free to include them, but it's not required. And if you're concerned about it and you don't have time to resubmit them, you could say, you know, refer to the design plans and photos submitted with the LOI.
Got it. Thank you guys.
Next person is David Pineda. I'm gonna go ahead and ask you to unmute.
All right. Good afternoon. Holly, this is a question regarding CEQA, which I know you went over, but I didn't catch it specifically. The question is, if the project includes planning and implementation, does CEQA need to be complete prior to the OPC board approval?
So I guess the answer would be no if the project includes the planning phase. I know there are some projects that have been proposed that include OPC funding the CEQA review. So, you know, obviously CEQA review does not have to be done before before the OPC would consider this project for approval.
Okay, thank you.
Next person is Jennifer Stern. I'm gonna go ahead and ask you to unmute yourself.
Great, thank you. So I have one question about the submittal. Is it your preference to have all one file, everything's in one PDF, or would you like to have them separated?
I think for the whole template, right, the one that has like the sections with the checklist, I think if you can get that all on one file, that would be preferred. I think it's fine to have the others, like the supplemental documents could be included in that, or I'm fine with that being separate. I don't know, Holly, what do you?
I think that it would be fine to have the supplemental documents be separate. One thing that would be really helpful from everyone is, as you're submitting the supplemental documents, just numbering them or putting letters on them so that they're in order, like A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Like the checklist.
Yeah, so we aren't trying to like sort through different kinds of file names and figure out where things are.
Great. I have two other questions too. Thank you for answering that one. And one of them is have to do with the Conservation Corps consultation. We also have done a consultation already for the same project that we're submitting for this grant. So am I correct in saying that I would need to confirm that the previous determination wouldn't change with the core? There's somebody named Andrea, you said, or is that?
Yeah, I don't think we know for sure if that would suffice for our grant. So I'm going to pull up Andrea's information and other emails that you could contact to just double check that on that.
Okay, yeah, because none of the project scope has changed. It would be the same exact information we'd be submitting, but I know it takes a little while to have that review done, so we wanted to just know as soon as possible so we could get it going if we need to.
Okay.
Okay, yes, that'd be great to hear back on that. And then the last question was about the governing board resolution. We, our practice at the City of Oakland is to go to our council when we have already been awarded funding. So we are, I know I emailed back and forth with you, Holly, about this a little bit, that it would be okay to have our council approve the resolution in September, which would be before October. But would there be an issue with it going to our council in December?
We really need that governing board resolution before we can bring potential project before our council. And you mentioned that I believe the director of public works potentially has authority to sign off on those, and there have been, at least for like very large organizations like universities, there are some places that have delegated authority. I don't know if that could potentially be used in your case. That's something we could maybe talk more about offline.
Okay, yeah, maybe we could talk more about that. So that sounds good. And then one last question I just thought of has to do with water quality. We are not doing any stormwater infrastructure in our project, but we are addressing sediment, excessive sediment and trash in the creek. And so when we're talking about water quality pollutants proposal, if we reference trash and sediment, is that adequate, or do we need to be more detailed about potential that would run off into the storm drain and get into a waterway?
I think trash and sediment is fine. I think you need to, reference why those are major pollutants of concern in the area.
Okay. Just try to explain their importance. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Yep.
And it looks like we have one last hand up, and it is from Sue. Might go ahead and ask you to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. I found my other question, and it has to do with the community engagement plan and activities. We've been doing this project for 6 years now, planning, and we're finally to the point of early implementation this summer with the first phase of this. And so we have done quite a bit of community engagement already. And so maybe it's something we can talk about when we have our one-on-one on Monday, but what we can do is talk about probably the longer term community engagement, because we're already at the point of having engaged the community for what the project needs are and what the community, how they could benefit from it. And I just wanted to check in to see if you have a suggestion about how we might handle that. And, with that first part of the community engagement, the short term.
I think you can include your current activities.
Okay.
Definitely, you can expand on that and let us know how you are engaging and how if it's been successful, and you can let us know a little bit about that as well, if you've documented or if there's anything tangible on that process that you've already developed, and then you can get into you can spend more time elaborating on the longer term. Again, that section is 2 pages, so you can decide what section you want to expand on versus providing a summary.
Okay, so just if we say that we have been carrying out activities for the past X years and this is what we've done, and this is who participated, then that would satisfy your short-term needs, short-term engagement.
I think it's what you've done, but also, you know, demonstrate that you're going to continue those efforts. I mean, we want to know that that's going to happen in the life of the grant, like the next, you know, the duration of the funding period, and what exactly, what strategies. If there are existing strategies, that's great. We just need to know what.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's me.
And that's all I have for raised hands.
All right. If folks have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us via email. We do want to make ourselves available for questions as you guys develop your full proposals. Congratulations for being invited back. We're really excited to see the full proposals when they come in at the end of the month. And thanks for your time today.
Yeah, thank you all. Also, I just put in that information for the Conservation Corps. Sorry that the message came in a little sloppy, but Andrea's email is also in there, Andrea Gabriel. So she's the direct contact, but there are like, I think 2 other emails in there for the local Conservation Corps, as well as the state Conservation Corps. So thank you all for attending. And we will speak to Barbara at 3 and the rest of the applicants today.
Thank you.